Tonight, we are going to continue our exploration of how the 12 steps operate to help us to facilitate the achievement of emotional sobriety. We are going to continue our discussion of step 4 tonight. I'm going to discuss the psychological and spiritual forces operating this step for about 20 minutes. It's going to be followed by about a 10-minute discussion by Thom Rutledge tonight, and then we will have a half an hour open for discussion. Once again, when it comes time for you to discuss this, we ask that you stay focused on tonight's topic, which is step 4, and specifically looking at our unenforceable rules and our unhealthy dependence that generates those rules. You'll have 2 minutes to discuss. In a minute and a half, Brian will let you know you have 30 seconds left, and when your time is up, he will let you know that your 2 minutes is up. So once again, I always like to put what we're doing tonight into the context of what's happened so far. As we work step 1, we realize that our life has become unmanageable because of our unhealthy emotional dependency. And that creates a lot of different reactions to trying to cope with that dependency, and none of which really help us have healthy relationships with either with other people, with life itself, with situations, etc., etc. As we come to face that and see that, it throws us into an existential crisis that I talked about. And that crisis is we see how destructive the way that we've been living in our lives has been, but we don't have anything healthy to replace it. So what ends up happening is that creates, as I said, this existential crisis, which creates an existential anxiety. God, I'm in a terrible spot and I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, that creates a certain kind of an energy that we talked about. This energy now makes us ready for what's going to happen in step 2. Step 2 is about hope. Hope that there's a better way. Hope that I can find a better way. Hope that I can learn how to live in a better way here in life. And so now that creates a charge, even though it resolves the existential crisis and anxiety we have. Hope needs to move to some kind of an action if it's going to be realized. So now in step 3, we make this commitment to finding a new way of life, a commitment to learning how to be in this world without this unhealthy dependence that's developed in our lives. So we make a commitment to that in our lives. And then once again, the charge builds up. We have a commitment, but a commitment has to be put into action. We have to integrate, learn some new behavior and integrate it in our life if we're going to make a change. Which means the first step is to become really aware of our emotional dependency and what it's done to our life. And that's the lens that we've put on, that we've looked at this searching and fearless moral inventory of step 4. And that's where we are today, is really looking at our emotional dependency and the effect it's had on our life. We've talked about that last time. We talked about using the emotional sobriety inventory to take a look at that. Tonight, we're going to look at the application of this. I'm going to show you a simulation of a session I had with a gentleman up in Thunder Bay, Canada. I was doing a workshop and there was about 300 social workers there, maybe more. And I was teaching them about emotional sobriety and how to use this inventory. And so I asked for a volunteer. And this gentleman came up and we had the following experience. So I'm going to share that with you now.
We're talking about this emotional sobriety form. I asked you guys to fill them out. And I said, does anybody want to volunteer and talk about what they put on their form? And you put your hand up. And so here we are now in front of all your colleagues. I mean, there's 300 social workers out here.
That's it?
It's just 300. It probably feels like a lot more than that right now. But, what I want to acknowledge, first of all, look, it takes a lot of courage for you to come up, because I imagine this is going to get pretty personal. So what as you know, that first column is what is it, what's the event that upset you? What happened?
My wife just won't do the dishes.
She won't do the dishes. Tell me what does
I mean,
it-
it's not really, it sounds
No,
really
it's simple,
petty,
but it's, there's more to it. I know that.
Okay, so, look, I work a lot, all right? And
Right.
she doesn't work right now. We have a 6-month-old daughter. And I ask that when I come home. I mean, I'm talking like, if you add up the commute that I do to go to work because of where we live, right? I work probably about 11, 12 hours a day. So I come home and there's dishes in the sink. Who's fucking doing them?
Right.
Me. And all I ask that she does throughout the day, I mean, I'm telling you, like, I pay the bills, she can do whatever she wants. And I respect that she takes care of her child.
Yes.
But just do the dishes. Because they're not my dishes.
So when they're not done and you walk in, what happens? What do you do then? So that's the second column.
Well,
so you walk in, I get what's upsetting you now.
Right.
You told her that this is important to me. She's not doing it. Is it all the time she's not doing it or most of the time?
It's most of the time. Well, I'd say it's all the time. She only does it if I text her ahead of time and tell her. And like my whole point is, why do I have to fucking text you ahead of time to tell you to do the fucking dishes?
That's the second part that upsets you. All right, I got it. So now let's go to that next column. So what happens when you walk in, you see the dishes aren't done, what do you do? What's the first thing you do?
Well, I have two options, right? I lose my shit,
Yeah,
which I don't want to.
Right.
Which turns into probably me out of the apartment, right?
I mean, she'd put you out of the apartment? Or?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's happened before.
Right.
Or I just shut off.
So you shut. How do you shut off? What do you do?
I'd sit on the couch.
You sit on the couch. What do you
And-
do while you're on the couch? What?
This is embarrassing.
Is
I sit on the couch and I play Angry Birds.
Angry Birds.
Yeah.
Well, how fitting that is, isn't it? I mean, you're playing Angry Birds.
I play Angry Birds. Yeah.
And then what happens? You're on the couch playing Angry Birds.
Well, I'd fucking shut off, man. I don't like.
So she'll walk
I don't
by,
want.
she'll say
yeah,
hi
because
to you.
because what she does is she wants to tell me about her day and tell me about all the shit, and all I can fucking think about is she didn't do the fucking dishes.
Right.
So I don't care. You need money for this. You want money for the car insurance. Great. Do the fucking dishes. Do your part.
So you just cut off. You just emotionally shut down, distance yourself.
Yeah, because the other way doesn't work right now.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, yeah, blowing up
And
shutting down.
I don't have control
The
of.
truth is that they're not very dissimilar, right? They're really opposite sides of the same coin. Don't worry about that right now.
Okay.
We'll get to that some other point.
All right.
So then this is the important thing. So the rule you have, the unenforceable rule is that you demand that she does those dishes, right? That's your rule. So would it be
Well, I guess
would
it's-
this be safe to say? You'd say it this way: if you loved me, you would do the dishes. Right?
Yeah.
If you love
Yeah.
me, you'd do the dishes.
Yeah.
If you love me, you'd
Yeah. Yeah.
respect some of what I want
I
from
asked
you.
one thing. So yeah.
One thing, right. And you sound like you make it a small thing, because I want to say to you, that's not a small thing. You're asking her a lot. And I'll explain what I mean by that later. And I know that like you're going, what do you mean? What are you talking? It's just one thing. No,
Yeah,
it's,
like I'm thinking
it's a lot. You
okay.
want her to do the dishes every day, regardless of what's going on in her life. And see, that's what I mean. You're not asking for her a small thing. You're asking her to totally disregard what's important for her and to pay attention to what's important to you. See, that's the rule. Right.
Okay. I want. Yeah,
All right.
I want
Well,
okay.
yeah,
All right.
let's go a little farther with it, though.
Okay.
See, because so then what you're saying is the dependency now that you have is that your love for her and your good feelings for her are dependent on her doing what you want her to do. See, that's what you're setting up here. And so there's no possibility, you're not creating any possibility outside of this demand for her to be connected to you. So you're saying, if we have the relationship on my terms, then we're okay. But if you're not going to meet me on my terms, then hell with you. And you throw her away. I mean, you act like she's throwing you away, but I'll tell you, man, You're throwing
Well,
her
it kind
away.
of feels like she is.
Of course you do, because your demand is that she's supposed to do this. All right, look, here's the real important thing. What do you think makes those dishes so important? What's that really about? What happens when you see those dishes? What does that trigger in you, man? That's got to connect to something.
Well, okay. My mom, when I was a kid, I come home from school, and I would judge the night based on if the dishes were in the sink or not.
And if they were in the sink, what would happen that night?
If the dishes were in the sink, it meant that my mom was drinking that night.
What was going to happen that night if mom was drinking?
Nothing good.
What does nothing good mean, Andrew?
She's just fucking angry, man. She was just angry. She'd have guys over I'd never seen before. I didn't eat. She'd come in my room and yell at me. Sometimes she'd let the guys do stupid shit to me, I guess.
Wow. You weren't safe if you saw the dishes in the sink, were you?
No.
That somehow when you come home and those dishes aren't done, all of this stuff with your mom is right there again, man.
Mm-hmm.
See, a lot of times what happens is that we demand that our future reverse the experiences of our past. But it doesn't work that way. See, what we need to do, we could start it right now, but it's going to take a lot of this. You got a lot to say to your mom. We got a lot of stuff to work through with your mom. And that's not going to go away by demanding your wife do the dishes, man. That's going to go away by you opening up a lot of this pain, which is, I see how hard it is for you. I understand that. But when you keep avoiding it, you keep doing these other things, you're not doing yourself, you're not doing your marriage a favor at all.
No, I'm not.
Okay, let me just say a few comments before I turn this over to Thom. See, it's very important to understand that when we talk about these emotional dependencies that we have, that many of them are unconscious. We don't realize that these forces within us are living our life. And this is a very, very important thing, because what it means is that a good part of recovery is about being open to discovering what these emotional dependencies are, as these situations like in Andrew's life surfaced, and now really have an arrow indicating and pointing to some of the trauma that he's never worked through that then generates these demands. Now, not every unenforceable rule is connected to a trauma like this. Some of it's connected to other things, but there's a good portion of things. And I would say the bigger the demand, the more reactive you are to the demand, the more likely it ties into something that's very, very painful in your life that is not resolved, that generated this unhealthy dependence. So in one way, we can kind of judge the intensity of our reaction, or use the intensity of our reaction to understand that there's a very, very deep wound here. This must be really, really important for me. And it's something I need to start taking a look at. And see, what happens is that instead of us taking a look at this stuff, is that we look to other people to be the way we think they need to be so they don't touch this wound, this pain. We want to regulate them to be a certain way so that we don't have to experience our discomfort, our pain. We don't have to look at the things that we need to look at to grow ourselves up. So this searching and fearless moral inventory of ourself starts a practice of self-examination. Is that when there's a problem, I'm looking at myself to see what's going on with me, not what's wrong with you. And that's the opposite that most of us, in the way that most of us have functioned our life. If something's going wrong, I try to figure out, what did you do wrong that's got me upset? And boy, if you're in a relationship with me, I'm a therapist, you better watch out. I got a big bag of tricks I can throw on you in terms of that stuff. Okay, so let me ask Thom to jump in here and comment on this, and then we'll open up the room for discussion. Thom, good evening.
Hey, good to see you. And I love that video. I've seen that before, and love every discussion we've ever had with that. And wow, it's and I was watching some of the faces of people as they watch it, and it's like people love that, and it makes such a great point. To me, it's funny because I was listening, because watching it this time from a different perspective, which is ironic because that's what I'm going to talk about, is a shift of perspective here. So I'm sitting here watching this thinking, okay, fourth step. And what I realize is you're doing in that session what we're all doing in our fourth step, which is doing exactly what you were describing just then. Is we're drastically changing a perspective. We're changing a paradigm. It's like we are, the word victim has a it's one of those words that's contaminated in our world, so that we immediately feel insulted when we use the word. And so I always want to say, let's just use the literal meaning, my literal meaning anyway, of the word victim, which is to be a victim thinker is to think that how I'm doing is determined by what happens to me. Non-victim thinking is simply how I'm doing is always determined by how I respond to what happens to me. All of us as human beings, because like you said, we grow up I don't know if it's in our genes or if it's just in our culture, but we think victim. We see situations and we say, this makes me feel this way. This makes me do this. This makes me think this way. Fourth step is the first place, like I've said before, the fourth step is the first place where it is to be the active role of pursuing emotional sobriety begins. And in order, I always say, in order to solve problems, you have to have a better problem definition. And by changing this perspective, we get a better problem definition. What happens here is you learn to step out, pan back a little bit, use like your 4 columns or this session, whatever we're going to look at. And we're going to look at this, we're going to look at ourselves in a different way than we ever have. And one of my favorite things that I've probably said a million times in this group about 12 steps is not that it says look at ourselves instead of other people. It just simply says look at ourselves first. Look at our side of the street first. It doesn't mean I can't be upset with you, Alan. It doesn't mean I can't have a problem with you. It doesn't mean I can't deal with that. What it does mean is if I can look at my side of this first, I'm going to be in a lot better shape. The video is a great example of that, because there's just such a, I think the clinical term for that is there's just such a shitload of stuff that guy has down there that if he weren't to deal, if he did deal with it, I mean, it's like it's just booby trapped, for that is such a direct connect. The moment he says, you say, what is that really about? And he says, my mother, and you go, God bless mothers everywhere. It's like, here it comes, you just can feel it happening. But what I think happens with this, and this goes to, I've got about 8 guys talking at the same time in my head. It's kind of like the Three Stooges trying to get out of the door at the same time. So I may be bottlenecking here a little bit because there's a lot to say. But the change in perspective, I think, happens in the fourth step because of what we talked about last time, which was having a trustworthy person do this with you. So, I don't know that we can do that on our own. We can do that with a therapist. We can do that with somebody guiding us through the fourth step. But ultimately, what we're doing is we're having a first experience, and what I think of is developing or not developing so much as discovering what I, in my, you can use different terms for it, but I call it the recovery voice. And this is the voice, this is the benevolent voice inside of us. We know where the addictive voice is. We know the other voice, the should monster voice that tells us we're pieces of shit. But this is a voice that is on our side. It really is so congruent with the fourth step. This is a voice inside of us that is on our side, but is a tough, loving voice. It's one, it is one it saves us, in my opinion. It's like, it certainly has me. It's the voice that says, we're going to do this hard work. We're going to, no. We're going to look at you first. And we're going to go through this way, and we're going to do it in this order, because this is the way people have done this before, and this is what's worked. And we're going to have the experience going through the fourth step, and we're going to feel that shift, and throughout that process. But this is also not just when you're doing the fourth step, like, officially, formally. This is part of how you also put the fourth step into your daily practice. Is where's that recovery voice? Where's that inner sponsor of mine that's basically guiding me and saying, no, take a look at this. Whether it's literally using your 4-column exercise or integrating that into a new way of looking at ourselves, we actually do this in a different order now, so that when we get to the place where it's time to deal with relationships, we are in better shape. We're ready to do that. Once I've dealt with some of my stuff, doesn't mean I have it all done, but I'm ready to talk to you because I'm upset with you, but I've got a lot more information about me to start with. So I'll wrap it up at that.